fairness, balance, turning the tables on your opponent with the help of the game. What actually makes the game fair? Is fairness actually fair? Is Dark Souls fair? No, Dark Souls isn't fair. Don't know where that came from. Anyone who says, "Oh, Dark Souls is tough but fair," haven't played Dark Souls. For the sake of argument, I'm going to list 3 sort of schools of thought that I've noticed when it comes to fairness. The first one is David Cage. Well, I'm just using the names of game directors who happen to take this kind of design philosophy to heart. Number 1's David Cage, where it's basically impossible to lose. The second one is Hideo Kojima, who gives you total control over how hard your experience is going to be. And the last one is Hidetaka Miyazaki, where everybody is on the same playing field. Any advantages you have are because of what your choices that you've made, if that makes sense. I'll explain these 3 in depth. Your first one, David Cage. If you don't know, David Cage directed games like Indigo Prophecy or Fahrenheit, Heavy Rain, Detroit Become Human, and a couple of others that I don't care about. These are your textbook these are your textbook walking simulators. Like, if you're fucking up and getting game overs, it's probably because you're doing it intentionally. There's a quote I want to read to you. David Cage once said, when he was discussing the game Beyond Two Souls, or another one that he made, he said this: "I've always felt that game over is a state of failure more for the game designer than from the player." And that just describes his entire game design philosophy, to be honest. It's why when you search for his games, the walkthroughs normally revolve around what choices that the Let's Player or the person doing the walkthrough is making, rather than, any actual difficulty or how do I do X puzzle, etc., because there is literally no difficulty in these games. Yeah, this sort of philosophy only really applies to adventure games. Like, if you tried pulling this shit in literally any other genre, you'd either just get laughed at, and you wouldn't get any sales, or modders would quote-unquote ruin your game by adding difficulty with extra hard mods or whatever. Yeah, it's very flawed, in my opinion. Like, granted, adventure games, they're not really played for the challenge. Like, most of the challenge comes from, puzzles, like making the right choices, and the replayability that comes from those choices. And it works for Quantic Dreams and David Cage, but doesn't really work for anyone else. Apart from Telltale games, I suppose. Even though they went bankrupt. But you know what I mean. Go watch the fucking Soy Golem Jim Sterling if you want to hear a rant about Telltale games. Because I legitimately couldn't give any less of a shit. Righty, which one was next? Kojima? Yeah, fuck it, let's do Kojima.
Did you like it?
Now, Kojima takes a very relaxed stance when it comes to setting difficulty for yourself. Well, let's take Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, for example. That had 6 difficulty settings. There was very easy, normal, hard, extreme, and European extreme. And very easy was a bit like a David Cage game. And then easy, normal, hard, and extreme were basically your average difficulty settings. And then there's European extreme, which is like hardcore mode. Like, if you got spotted once, the game ended and you had to start again. Like, that kind of really, really brutal. Now, I don't want to try and make this video about inclusivity versus authorial intent. And by inclusivity, I mean actual inclusivity, like, especially for disabled gamers or casuals who aren't necessarily used to very difficult games. But no, off-topic on an off-topic thing. Now, Kojima has stated before that he doesn't consider video games to be artistic expression, so this doesn't really apply to him, but a lot of people have an issue with difficulty settings because they think that if you get to choose how difficult the game is, it sort of takes away from what the original game creators were trying to say with it. And it's a pretty stupid argument on both sides. But it is still worth mentioning. Because, If you think about it, if you think the average person is stupid, like, half of the world are stupider than him. So, yeah, we might need to sort of humour stupid, pointless arguments every now and again. And since we're going to be doing something stupid and wasting brain power, that's what these caffeine pills are for. Not sponsored, by the way, but if any energy drink companies or trucker pill companies or whatever want to sponsor me, then hit me up. But yeah, Kojima lets you play his games at completely your own pace. He did something different in Metal Gear Solid 5. He made the difficulty adaptive, so the game changes depending on how well you play. Like, if you're playing really well, the difficulty will get harder, and if you're maybe not doing as good, it'll get easier and easier until you're, progressing properly at the normal speed, as well as a couple of other stuff as well. Like the point. Like, the example that a lot of people like to use is if you headshot a lot of people, enemies will start wearing helmets, which is just so fucking cool. Now, at last, we have Hidetaka Miyazaki, the director of Dark Souls, and he thinks that everyone should start more or less exactly the same. More or less. And any advantages that you have over someone else are purely from the choices that you made. Like, you chose to explore, and you found that cool weapon. So you're going to have an easier time because of that. Think of the Drake's Sword. Think of killing Pinwheel early on in the game. Think of the shortcuts. Dozens and dozens of shortcuts. Countless shortcuts. Freeing Lautrec to get a sunlight token. Just little things like that. They'll just make your time that little bit easier. Because you went out of your way to explore. And sort of, play the game instead of trying to rush through it. Like, there isn't really much to say about this because it's literally equal opportunity. Like, there's no extra stuff. That's literally what it is. Okay, as a recap, David Cage thinks everyone should be a winner. Kojima thinks you should be able to go at whatever pace you want. And Miyazaki thinks that everyone should start off equally. Now let's deconstruct them to prove that none of these answers are really perfect, and you could put forward counter-arguments against them. First of all, David Cage's everyone's a winner, game over means the game developers failed. Okay, this is pretty stupid, I will admit. If you make game over, if you genuinely think that a game over means that the game developers failed, then you're just opposed to difficulty and challenge in games at all. Like, you're not playing video games at that point. You're just watching a movie and occasionally pressing buttons. Like, and I get that they're easy to make, and they make you, David Cage, a lot of money, but they're not really that engaging. Like, they're good for a let's play maybe, or to, play with your dad. But you're not really going to be going back to them, are you? Like, especially after you finish the story. Like, no, you take them to GameStop. Okay, Kojima. I think Kojima's is the most solid. That wasn't intentional, but never mind. I think Kojima's is the best, but you still could make the argument that what difficulty setting is the game intended to be played at? And don't cop out and say whichever one you want. That's not what I mean. I'm just saying, when Kojima's in the shower or sat on the bus or something, thinking of ideas for his games, like, in his head, one shudders to imagine what inhuman thoughts lie behind those glasses. What dreams of chronic and sustained cruelty.
Did you like it?
What difficulty setting would be most comparable to those original thoughts? And as for Miyazaki, his way of going about it isn't really that well fleshed out. Like, I prefer a bit more customizability, like maybe adjust, like little things, like maybe bonfire frequency, or it'd be completely optional, of course, and the game could make it crystal clear that this is not how it was intended to be played, but I think a lot of people would be able to enjoy Dark Souls a lot more and experience things other than its difficulty, which it is really good for, if that wasn't a problem. So, yeah, fuck it. Easy mode for Dark Souls. It is yet another thing I would not give any less of a shit about. And there we have it, the 10-minute mark. Although I'm not sure why I bother. I can't monetize this channel, can I? Duh! Also, there's a whole other discussion about things like trading card games, fighting games, shooters, that I could definitely go into later. Because there's a whole other thing, there's nerfs and buffs and balances over, just banning characters and just all sorts of stuff I could definitely get into in another video. If you're interested. I'm not just gonna, pump out, a 40-minute video that nobody gives a shit about. Don't have the patience for it. I'd just rather make, a 10-minute video like this. Dropped a 2p on the floor. Special thanks to Stolen Dragoon, Ori Main, and Baby Kitschy, and all of my other patrons, and all of you for watching and listening to me rant. What's your favourite, example of a game being fair towards its players? If you want to tell me. Even if you don't want to tell me, just write any old shit in the comments, who cares? The algorithm doesn't care. I don't really care that much. But, it helps the search engine optimization, so if you like me, you will drop a comment, and if you hate me and want me to die, you will also drop me a comment and make that perfectly clear for me. 'Cause you're a good boy who does what he's told. The hydraulics in this chair are fucked. If I just lean back and forth... See, it's already gone down a bit. Swear to God. It's the floor. The floor is uneven. The tripod goes up like this. But the camera has to be angled like this. Because the floor is uneven. And it gives me back pain. My back hurts when I sit like this. I found a good angle like this for when I'm doing computer shit, editing this in about 5 minutes, but still, it's a pain in the ass. I hate it. And I hate the shitty countryside upload speed. It's it's bad.